So I just got home from church, and it's raining outside, so I couldn't use my normal studio, the front lawn, so I had to go into the house. And actually, very apropos, it's the title of today's video, and that is Stirring the Water. So I was speaking with a friend recently, and we were talking about how the process of change is centered around doing things that are out of the normal and essentially shaking things up. And so I then coined the phrase in that conversation, water that is unstirred becomes stagnant or rancid or whatever you like. Insert what you like, but I said water that is unstirred becomes stagnant. So are you becoming stagnant? So I came down this morning, or got home from church, and I decided to investigate my pool. And it's been a while since I turned the filter on, because it's indoors, and essentially it doesn't have as much environmental fallout. But sometimes that means things like the green stuff, like algae, actually can take root a little more because there's not as much sunlight. So it's something I oscillate a little bit on. I mean, it's never terrible, but I've turned on the filter, and I'll scrub it in a bit. But I have to talk to you first. So, if you watch a lot of my videos, I talk about how transformation is never a giant step. It is a process of small incremental steps to get you to where you want to go. So, near my house, there's a pond, and it's a year-round pond. But I oftentimes watch it go through several different stages. Now, it's a man-made pond, but it's quite a good size. So later in the fall, that pond becomes still. There's no activity in it. I'm going to talk about the activity in a minute. And then through the winter, of course, it freezes over. And then in the spring, it's still as well, and it gets kind of gross. It gets a lot of slimy algae on it. There's some overgrowth that happens. If you go close to it, I'll put it this way, you wouldn't want to have a drink. And then invariably what happens, as soon as the weather changes to the point that there's not going to be any freezing at all, the guy who owns it, or the woman, they turn on a pump. And it's just a sprinkle of water that just happens in the center of the pond. And slowly but surely, over about a month period, that small amount of essentially oxygenation totally cleans up the pond. The algae pretty much disappears. All the scum that's on top pretty much disappears. And if you go close to it, it is not undesirable to think about even taking a swim. I still don't know if I'd drink out of it, but I would take a swim, for sure. And that's that pond analogy is something you can actually apply to your life. So, what do I mean by that? Let's pretend, what is stagnation? Stagnation is doing the same thing all the time and wondering why nothing's getting better or changing. So, maybe you're going to work, putting in your time there. Maybe you have the same conversations with the same people all the time. And they could be fine conversations or they could be negative conversations, but the point is the same. You lay on the couch and you scroll Instagram or just do mindless things like watching endless amounts of TV. Maybe you go out now and again because you feel a little bit guilty about sitting around all day. But it's really a version of what you've been doing anyway. And wash, rinse, and repeat. if you continue to do that, you'll have a mindset that when differences come in, you'll actually be resistant. When new and interesting and great things come your way, you'll actually be blinded to see that they're new, interesting, and great. Kind of like that pond. So for example, that pond that first it gets some algae, then there's some growths, and then the mosquitoes come because that's still water is ideal for mosquitoes, which are parasites, to lay their eggs. And I'm not saying there's not a whole ecosystem that develops, which for nature, that pond is necessary. You know what? Heck, your lethargy might be necessary for a short period as well. But if you stay in that lethargy, you end up being that 65-year-old in the home who can't walk, because if you don't use it, you lose it. So, stirring the water, what does that mean? So, I'm not telling you to quit your job. I'm not telling you to move. I'm not telling you to stop dealing with the people you're dealing, but maybe just like that little sprig of water that reinvigorates the whole pond, start doing different things. Maybe go grocery shopping at a brand new place. Maybe drive to a familiar destination a brand new way. Maybe if you make a connection with someone who seems radically different than those you've been associating with before, different but arguably very refreshing, talk to them more, or interact with them more, do a little fact finding. Maybe if you've had those people in your life before, and you stopped associating with them because they weren't the same old stagnation that you'd always had in your past. And the newness, although exciting and arguably wonderful, was a little bit scary. Because make no mistake, when that stagnant pond first, like all those critters that are in the pond, all the biosphere that's happened, when that water starts up the first time, all the frogs are like, huh? And they don't know what's going on. The mosquito larvae probably don't know anything about it, but what essentially starts happening though is that there's a change that happens because the water starts getting more oxygen in it. And all of that bullshit, which has been growing in the water, starts to die. It starts to die. So that means when you start doing new and healthy small things, your desire to sit around scrolling, watching endless cat videos, or I don't know, men and women showing themselves at the gym with their ass shots and whatever else, or what they bought, all that stuff will make you'll lose a taste for it, because it will become that stagnant repetition. The TV shows that you watch constantly that, although may be from your youth and may give you a certain level of comfort, after a period of time you'll actually have a desire for new and interesting things. Those associations you have, which are still locked in that trap, because make no mistake, stagnation is a trap. It is a trap. It is a trap that creates, oftentimes in psychological circles, they talk about how people get stuck in cycles of endless repetition. And you're not in that cycle alone. It's like you and all these components, you're all in jail together. And it could be people, or it could be the habits, or all that kind of stuff. So just like that little sprig of oxygen starts happening, you then have an opportunity, you'll feel the oxygen coming into yourself. You'll feel that those things you're indulging in won't be as attractive or attractive at all. You know, you'll start to, it's like when you go to the gym, they say to form a habit, you have to do the same thing for, I think it's 21 days. I don't know precisely, but you'll start to want to go to the gym, or even if you're walking around the block, you'll actually want to walk around the block more, and that will foster more healthy things. Maybe you'll read a book that is talks about happy, wonderful things instead of challenges and hardship. Maybe you'll listen to a podcast where someone says, hey, you know, we've helped all these people in the past get better because they were able to do this, and that. And you might hear yourself you might hear that they're talking about a version of you that others have overcome. And it will become that process where you go, oh yeah. And then you'll be able to take an inventory after a period of time with that little faucet running, putting oxygen in the water. You'll be able to take stock and say, oh, do I want to have mosquito larvae floating in my personal pond? Do I want to have algae and scum floating around? Do I want dead twigs and all kinds of slithery things in my water? Or do I want the nice clear water that is nicely circulated, is fresh and clean? And not only I can enjoy that, but the people around me can enjoy that, both some from the past and opening the door for some in the future. And my friends, this is simple, because all it requires you to do is to stir the water.